Phillip Lee.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm the only regular practicing medical doctor in this chamber, and it's somewhat surprising that no one actually contacted me to lobby on behalf of any issue with regards to what we're debating. I stand here as someone who has no idea whether I have any constituents affected by this dreadful scandal. But what I do have, I guess, is an understanding of what it's like to have hepatitis C and what it's like to have HIV. And on a personal level, I was once married to somebody who carried the gene for haemophilia. So I have considered the idea of bringing a haemophiliac into this world and the implications thereof. And more importantly, I've spent weekends away with the Haemophilia Society in the past, and I've been privy to the annoyance, upset, anger, frustration with this whole affair since it started to rear its ugly head in the late 70s. I think it's important when we're discussing this to try and separate emotion from fact. The fact of the matter is before you could administer cryoprecipitate factor VIII, the life expectancy of haemophiliacs in this country was in the 20s. So when we come to talk about compensation, and maybe this is a way of decoupling us from the compensation scheme that's in the Republic of Ireland, I think we need to talk about compensating people for loss of earnings, widows' pensions, instead of compensating them for loss of life. It's important that we distinguish the two instead of getting emotional. It's very easy to stand up and talk about distressing cases. You can apply that to a whole array of conditions. Let's concentrate on fact, and maybe there's an appropriate solution here. Now, in terms of what I'd like to talk about, I'm very conscious of time, and I could speak all day on this issue. Morality and cost. Trying to come to some conclusion as to what is an appropriate compensation. To my mind, the present economic difficulties that our government is dealing with actually shouldn't be a consideration here. The reality is that a big wrong occurred, and that we need to deal with that, irrespective of the timing of it. It was the former member for Plymouth Devonport who was involved at the very outset, a medically qualified person under a Labour government, and it was a Conservative government that then continued to miss the sign, shall we say, and not to implement necessary procedures to make sure that the blood was not contaminated. But it's appropriate that we deal with this, and I want to draw attention to the figures. If you look at the Archer Inquiry report, which I must say I've only read the first 4 chapters because I only realised at 12:30 that this was going to be debated. Okay, well, in the first 4 chapters I've already noticed mistakes, so I'm not encouraged by the report in general. However, it cites a figure which I think the Department of Health, in notes I presume to the ministers, have come to this 3 billion figure. Well, in fact, it's actually 1 billion. There's a typo, because if you divide the two figures, you don't get 850,000, you actually get 350,000. So let's start talking about facts first. We may be talking about 1 billion, not 3 billion. And if you add into that, decoupling it in terms of life and the price of life, I think we can arrive at a compensation scheme that I can support.
Deputy Speaker, before he sits down, is he actually saying, so I did hear this briefly before I came in, that the figure 3 billion is a misprint, is a typo mistake, and it should be 300 million? I think that needs to be clarified.
Thank you. Yes, I am, yes. It strikes me that if you do the division, there's one figure wrong. It's 853 as opposed to 353 from the top of my head. But I would encourage people to look at that. And when we talk about it, if it is £1 billion, 3.5 days a week, we spend £1 billion on the NHS, 3.5 days a week. I think we can find this money. Because I don't know how you price a liver. I don't know how you price waiting for a liver transplant that doesn't happen. I can't put a price on that. I challenge anyone else to try and put a price on it. We're talking about 4,670 people. Come off it. I think we can find it to behave appropriately at last and provide the appropriate compensation. Because there are the financial implications. I mean, there's a list. HIV widows are forced through the benefits agency to seek work within weeks of their partner's death. Hepatitis C widows whose partners died before 2004 received no financial help at all. The implications for the haemophilia community are stark. And in all honesty, I can't stand here and say, oh, right, OK, we're going to trim this and trim that because we need to pay for this, that and that and the comprehensive spending review. I'd rather borrow the 500 million quid, personally. I'd rather do the right thing. Yes, I give way.
Thank you very much for giving way. With your medical background, would you be able to explain to us in this House whether it would be appropriate for someone with hepatitis C to get incapacity benefit?
I believe that it is, but I think that's missing the point, with respect. The Department of Health, as far as I'm concerned, is culpable in this. And I think it's the Department of Health. It's not actually a party political thing. This is a department issue. They had a series of opportunities to deal with this issue, which they missed over a number of years, and have now surprisingly lost a few documents in the process. This is shocking. And if it's about precedent, if they're worried about precedent, that makes me concerned about other conditions, other treatments. Is there something else that we should know about? Because if it is about precedent, I'd like to set one. This was wrong. We should pay out, and we should pay out appropriately. I'll give way.
Thank you very much. Grateful to the member for allowing me to intervene. The member's made a very important point about the figure of 3 billion being a typographical error. I wonder if the front bench is able to respond on a point of information on that point now, because it will colour the rest of the debate.
Absolutely. 10 seconds.
Just quickly, if you make a fair point, I would like to meet with the Minister of State, and hopefully she'll be able to give me some time, because there are a series of issues here I'd like to discuss. And just in closing...
There is a time limit. I'm sorry. Owen Smith.